Hey everybody, this is my introduction for Module 1 for 626 in your EDLA courses. Of course, this class is about equity, inclusion, cultural identity, and all sorts of things that are really critical to us understanding how we can move forward with schools that successfully serve all students equally with justice and dignity. So for our first module, we're going to be doing a couple of really important things. So the first thing that I will have you do is just take a look at what is included in your module. The first thing is a positioning paper. This paper actually reflects a really similar paper that I was asked to write by a scholar named oh my gosh, John Diamond. Sorry, I almost forgot his name. Dr. Diamond was a professor of mine. He now teaches at Harvard and Brown. He is someone who is extremely highly respected in his field, especially in looking at equity and inclusion issues in schools. But what Dr. Diamond has really successfully done has articulated the kinds of mechanisms that occur in schools that lead to inequitable outcomes. And he's a sociologist, so he looks at things from a sociological perspective, and a lot of the things that we will read during this course will be from historians, sociologists, educators, educational leaders. So when I took Dr. Diamond's class, the very first thing that he grounded us in, and I think it's a really great practice, is for us to think about our own selves, our own positions in this world in terms of equity and in terms of justice. And so I'm asking you to do the same thing. In this paper, I want you to reflect on the way that your life has sort of evolved and unpacked, and the way that you as an individual have been impacted by some of these issues. So I'm going to read just a real brief snippet. It says, for this assignment, you will reflect on your demographic background as it relates to your role as an educational leader. More specifically, please reflect on how your race, ethnicity, social class, and or sex, and the demographic characteristics of the community where you were raised and where you work have impacted your educational opportunities, experiences, and leadership orientations. So think deeply about where you come from, how you have been affected, how your life right now, where you are, how it has been sort of consequentially impacted by all of those factors. One of the things that I would encourage you to think about is intersections between different identities. So while I am a white, middle-class, educated person, I'm also a woman. I'm also a fat woman. And the intersecting elements of that identity have framed my life in really significant ways. So while I have a ton of privilege as a white, middle-class, highly educated person, I still experience inequities and injustices on a regular basis because of my gender. I am still spoken to in ways that may not be equal to the ways that my partner is spoken to. In fact, he and I just had an experience where that occurred in a government institution where I was treated sort of with a little bit of a pat on the head, and he was assumed to sort of be kind of in charge of the situation. So as women, we experience this all the time. Sometimes we don't think about it. Sometimes we sort of repress it. I would ask you to think about the way that that has impacted the choices that you have made. As a fat woman, I can tell you growing up, I've had all kinds of experiences deep from my past where education and educational opportunities were really painful for me. In school, where I was weighed in front of students or measured by my eighth grade science teacher at the beginning of every school week. These sound like crazy things to people to say, like, wait, your eighth grade science teacher measured and weighed you in front of your class? Yeah, he did. And if you're not a fat kid, or if you're not a tall kid, that might not seem like a big deal. If you're sort of an average height, average sized person, right? It's hard to imagine the kind of stigmatization and the kind of shame you experience in those spaces. So whatever kinds of things have impacted you, and have made you who you are today and have guided you in the choices that you have made, write about those. When I applied for my PhD, I had, in terms of like how I've sort of come to this place of this education, the education level that I have, right, which is a great privilege of mine. When I applied for my PhD program, I applied just threw my paper into the pile, and I was admitted, and it blew my mind, right? I was like really scared to think, am I going to make it into this elite program? And so I was in the program for several months before I had a conversation with someone who told me about one of the sort of social benefits that I had, the social capital, and that's a concept we're going to talk about, that had actually benefited me in my application. For the first 13 years of my career, I taught in a small rural school. And 5 years later, when I applied for graduate school, I was teaching at a wealthy suburban high school. When I was in graduate school, I had a conversation with one of my professors who said to me, "Oh, do you know how you got into graduate school?" And I was like, "Oh, and she said, "Yeah, Julie Mead, who was a very distinguished professor in the department. Julie Mead showed your application to some of us on the acceptance committee. And she said, we should take her. She's a great teacher. My daughter loved her." Think about that. I went from teaching in a small rural school for 13 years, where I did some of the best teaching I'd ever done. And for 5 years, taught in a rich suburban school where Julie Mead's daughter attended. No professor's daughters attended my small rural school. I had moved into a school where there was wealth, where there was access, and where there were college professors who, little did I know during that lovely parent-teacher conference I had with Julie Mead, that she was going to remember my name, and that capital, that piece of that value that I got from that relationship would serve me later. So it was teaching in a wealthy school district with access and privilege that actually got me access to this place, that built my capital, that put me in a position to be here with you. So I tell you those little stories because these are the things I want you to be mining and digging into and thinking about as you think through this positionality paper. Establishing your position and understanding your positionality when it comes to access, race, and justice, all those kinds of things, is a lifetime job. So this is just a snapshot of this moment right now for you to reflect on and think about. So that's the first thing I really want you to think about in this module, is that positioning paper. The other thing I want you to do over the course of this week is to look at something we're going to do in, I hope, every module, but maybe just most modules, is we're going to do a scholar spotlight. It's really easy, I think, to get bogged down in all of the really difficult challenges ahead of us as educators and the things that really weigh us down in terms of these cruelties, injustices, and this, like, really in many cases, violent, life-altering harm that schools can do to students, especially when schools are not thinking deeply and doing really critical work towards creating less oppressive systems. So I want to start by offering you the voice of a scholar named Sarah Lawrence Lightfoot, who brings to us not a rose-colored glasses image, not a feel-good, not a soothing message about schools, but one that is both hopeful and grounded in the real hard work ahead. I want you to watch. I have added for you guys in the module a video of a speech that Dr. Lawrence Lightfoot did in 2017 at AERA, which is the American Educational Research Association, which is the largest international research association for educational research in the world. In fact, I will be attending AERA in April, so I will be able to talk to you about what I saw and what I learned while I was there. But in 2017, Dr. Lawrence Lightfoot was offered the opportunity to give the distinguished lecture, and I cry every time I watch it the power and beauty of her words, but also the inspiring hope that she provides is something I hope comes across to you. I'd like for you to also review her scholarly biography and also take a look at the article that of hers that I have offered you as well, and get to know her as a scholar, as a poet, as an artist, and as a voice that I hope will resonate with you as we do this really difficult work. So that's our Scholar Spotlight. Also the equity audit, you're going to dig into that equity audit. Well, I'll hopefully be able to answer lots of questions for you in the synchronous class. If you can't attend synchronously, watch that class to hopefully get some of those questions answered. So come to class on Tuesday with questions, having reviewed all of that material. That'll be really important, especially so you can get questions answered. And then of course, next week, after you've had an opportunity to do all of this work, I would love for you to write a reflection that really pulls out the important pieces that matter to you, that ring true with you, and that have made you think about this work and the work that you hope to do in your professional life. Okay, so that's the intro to Module 1. Reach out to me if you need anything, but for those of you who can attend class synchronously this week, I will see you on Zoom. Thanks so much.